There comes a moment, often subtle, sometimes violent, in the arc of a life where all that once made sense begins to unravel. You've played your roles, worn the masks that society gave you, chased the dreams others handed to you like neatly wrapped gifts with hollow cores. You've obeyed, adjusted, assimilated, succeeded by the standards of the outer world, and yet you feel the quiet ache, a nameless emptiness, not of loss, but of something never found. This is not failure. This is your soul calling out through the silence, because life doesn't begin when you're born. Life doesn't begin when you earn, achieve, or are praised. Life begins when you find yourself. From the moment we take our first breath, we are ushered into a world already scripted for us. Before we can speak, before we even understand the sound of our own name, society has begun to whisper its expectations into our ears. Our culture, our family, our institutions. They hand us a set of values, roles, and rules. We are taught how to behave, what to want, who to become, and so, unconsciously, we begin to trade pieces of ourselves for belonging. We learn what earns praise and what invites punishment. We adapt because to survive as a child means to please those around us. It is the only currency we know. As we grow, the script becomes more complex. School teaches us competition. Social circles teach us conformity. Religion may teach us shame. And the workplace teaches us that our worth is measured in productivity. We become increasingly skilled at wearing the masks that others admire, whether that's the successful professional, the dutiful child, the loyal partner, or the tireless achiever. On the surface, it may look like we are thriving. We have the degrees, the salary, the relationship, the approval. But inside, something is amiss. This is the illusion of the outer life. The belief that by fulfilling external expectations, we are also fulfilling ourselves. It is a dangerous illusion, not because it is entirely false, but because it is incomplete. These roles we adopt are not inherently wrong. There is value in duty, responsibility, and achievement. The danger lies in mistaking these outer layers for our essence. We confuse the image of life with life itself. Many people live decades like this, never questioning the script they were handed. They wake each day to perform a version of themselves they did not choose, often unaware that they are performing at all. They obey the momentum of life, not its meaning. And slowly, quietly, they begin to feel the symptoms of self-abandonment, restlessness, anxiety, numbness, despair. These are not merely psychological ailments. They are spiritual messages. They signal that the life being lived does not belong to the soul living it. In our society, there is immense pressure to appear fine, to keep smiling, to keep achieving. And when discomfort arises, we are taught to distract ourselves through consumption, entertainment, or overwork. But the ache does not go away, it deepens, because no amount of success or pleasure can compensate for the loss of one's own truth. A man may own the world and still feel homeless inside if he has never truly known himself. Finding yourself requires that you first recognize this illusion. It requires the humility to admit that the life you are living may not be fully yours. That your desires may have been inherited, not discovered. That your sense of identity may be more performance than presence. And this realization can feel like a crisis. But in truth, it is a beginning. To step out of the illusion of the outer life is to reclaim the power to author your own story. It is to stop asking, "What do others expect of me?" and begin asking, "What is true for me?" It is a turning inward, a courageous confrontation with all that has been suppressed, denied, or forgotten. And though this journey is rarely celebrated by the world, it is the most vital journey you will ever take. Because only when the illusion is shattered can the real life begin. The life that arises not from expectation, but from essence. To find yourself, you must be willing to descend, not upward, toward more accomplishments or accolades, but downward, into the dark, uncertain territory of your inner world. This descent is not something our culture teaches or celebrates. We are taught to seek clarity, productivity, and positivity. We are told to keep moving forward, to stay on track, to avoid discomfort, but the path to self-discovery doesn't lie in what is easy or obvious. It lies in what is hidden, what you've buried, ignored, or feared. This journey inward into the soul is often triggered not by choice but by crisis. It begins when something collapses, when the job you've invested your identity in disappears, when the relationship you built your sense of worth around falls apart, when illness or depression strikes, or when a deep fatigue sets in that no amount of rest can cure. These are not random misfortunes. They are signs that the outer structures you've built your life upon no longer align with your inner truth. The descent into the self can feel like falling. Old certainties vanish. The ground becomes unstable. And for a time, you may feel lost, directionless, disoriented. Our instinct is to resist, to try to fix things, to return to what we once were. But this descent is not meant to be reversed. It is meant to be followed. Because in the depths lies the very thing we have been seeking, ourselves. To go inward is to confront the unconscious, the vast, mysterious terrain beneath our awareness. This includes our forgotten memories, our hidden desires, and perhaps most powerfully, our shadow, the parts of ourselves we were taught to reject. The shadow holds our anger, our shame, our jealousy, our wildness, our vulnerability. It is made of all the aspects we learned were unacceptable, and so we pushed them away. But what is repressed does not disappear. It waits. It influences us from the dark, shaping our behavior in ways we do not understand. The descent into the self demands that we meet the shadow, not as an enemy, but as a guide. For within those rejected parts lies immense energy. There is truth in your rage, depth in your grief, power in your fear. What you repress controls you. What you confront, you integrate, and what you integrate transforms you. This inner work is deeply uncomfortable. It requires honesty without judgment. It asks you to see your contradictions, your wounds, your mistakes, not to condemn them, but to understand them. To ask, why do I carry this pain? Where did this fear begin? Whose voice lives in my inner critic? In doing so, you begin to unearth the layers that have obscured your authentic self. In many ways, the descent is a death. A death of illusions, of false identities, of conditioned beliefs. And like any death, it brings grief, but it also makes space for something new, something real to emerge. You begin to hear a different voice, not the loud, anxious voice of ego, but the quiet, persistent voice of your soul. This soul does not shout. It does not bargain. It simply waits for you to listen. And when you do, you begin to remember, not facts or events, but essence. You remember who you were before the world told you who to be. You touch something timeless, something sacred, something uniquely your own. This is why the descent matters. It is not a detour from life. It is the hidden path toward it. Only by entering the depths can you rise with integrity. Only by facing the unconscious can you awaken. And only by meeting the parts of yourself you once feared can you become whole. So when life breaks you open, do not rush to escape the darkness. Go deeper. There, in the stillness and uncertainty, you will find the doorway not just to healing, but to the life that truly belongs to you. From the moment we learn to speak and interact with the world, we begin to wear masks. These masks, social roles, expectations, and identities, are not inherently bad. In fact, they are necessary to some extent. They help us navigate society, form relationships, and function in various groups. The term for this construct is persona, the part of ourselves we present to the world. It is shaped by culture, family, school, religion, and the desire to belong. And yet, what begins as a tool for connection can become a prison when we forget that the mask is not the self. The persona is adaptive. It changes depending on who we're with and what environment we're in. You may wear the mask of the dutiful child at home, the successful professional at work, the charming friend at a gathering. Each of these is a fragment of your truth, but none of them is the whole. Problems arise when we become overly identified with the persona. When we begin to believe that we are the role we play, we lose contact with the deeper, more authentic self that exists beneath the surface. This misidentification is subtle, and it often happens unconsciously. We may think we are confident, when in reality we have simply mastered the art of suppressing our insecurity. We may believe we are kind and agreeable, when in fact we've buried our anger and boundaries to avoid conflict. We may pride ourselves on being successful, while feeling internally empty and unfulfilled. The persona can mimic real confidence, compassion, or competence, but without the foundation of authenticity, it remains hollow. We construct these masks to gain approval, to feel safe, to avoid rejection. We learn early in life what aspects of ourselves are acceptable and which are not. The parts that receive praise are exaggerated. The parts that invite judgment or discomfort are hidden. Over time, the mask becomes so seamless that we don't even notice it's there. We look in the mirror and see a reflection, but not a true image. And then something begins to shift. Maybe it's burnout, or a relationship that no longer fits, or a vague, persistent sense that something is missing. That's the soul knocking. That's your real self, your buried, silenced, authentic self, asking to be seen. Removing the mask is not easy. It can feel like tearing off your own skin, because in many ways it is what protected you. It helped you survive. It allowed you to be accepted in a world that often punishes difference and vulnerability. But protection is not the same as truth, and survival is not the same as living. The process of uncovering the self begins with awareness. Start by noticing where you feel most performative. Where are you not telling the whole truth? When do you laugh when you want to cry? Where do you agree when your soul resists? These small betrayals of the self may seem harmless, but they accumulate. They become the invisible barriers between you and your real life. To remove the mask is to reclaim your voice, to feel your real emotions, to stand in your truth even when it is uncomfortable. It does not mean rejecting your roles altogether, but it means no longer confusing them with your identity. You can be a parent, a partner, a professional, but these are aspects of your life, not definitions of your essence. True freedom begins when you no longer fear being seen as you are, when you stop editing yourself to gain acceptance. When you realize that authenticity may cost you approval, but it gives you back your soul. And once that happens, once you have tasted life without the mask, you will never again be content with pretending. Because what lies beneath the persona is not weakness, it is power. It is the real, unfiltered, unrepeatable essence of who you are. And when you live from that place, life stops being a performance and becomes an expression. And not of the role you play, but of the truth you embody. There comes a moment in life, quiet yet undeniable, when you realize that living by external definitions is no longer enough. The success, the image, the conformity, it no longer feeds your spirit. You begin to sense a deeper calling, a kind of inner pressure that demands not more achievement, but more truth. This moment marks the beginning of one of the most important journeys a person can undertake, the process of individuation. Individuation is the path of becoming whole, not perfect, not ideal, but whole, a human being who has come into conscious relationship with all parts of themselves. It is a process of integration, a sacred unfolding in which you are called to meet, accept, and bring together all the pieces of your psyche. Your light and shadow, your joy and sorrow, your reason and imagination, your strength and vulnerability. This journey is not one of self-improvement in the conventional sense. It is not about polishing your image or refining your persona to gain more approval. It is about shedding the false and embracing the real. It is about discovering who you are beneath what the world told you to be. Individuation is not a straight line, nor is it comfortable. It is complex, painful, illuminating, and deeply human. To individuate is to recognize that your psyche is not a singular, clean-cut identity, but a constellation of different voices, urges, and potentials. It is to begin listening to the unconscious, the vast, silent realm beneath your conscious mind where dreams, symbols, and forgotten truths reside. Often, it is in dreams that the first clues to our deeper self appear. Images that seem strange or frightening are not random. They are messages from the hidden self, trying to make its way into the light of awareness. Individuation asks you to face your shadow, the part of you that contains all the qualities you've rejected, repressed, or feared. This is not merely about confronting negativity. The shadow also holds lost vitality, creativity, sensuality, and power. By reclaiming it, you don't become darker, you become more complete. You learn to live not in denial of your contradictions, but in conscious relationship with them. The process is often misunderstood as selfish or isolating, but in truth, it is the only way to live in authentic connection with others. Until you know yourself, your relationships are shaped by projection. You see others not as they are, but as reflections of your own unresolved inner world. When you begin to know and accept your full self, you can finally relate from a place of clarity, compassion, and truth. You no longer need others to complete you or validate you. You can meet them soltus, not mask. Individuation is also deeply creative. As you discover who you are, you begin to shape your life in alignment with that truth. Your work, your art, your relationships, even your solitude, all become expressions of the self, not performances for the world. You are no longer pulled in 10 directions by external voices. There is an inner compass now, a quiet, steady knowing that guides you even when the path is unclear. This is not a path with a final destination. Individuation is not something you achieve and then cross off your list. It is a lifelong evolution, a spiral rather than a straight line. You return to old wounds with new eyes. You revisit forgotten dreams with renewed courage. And each time you move closer to the center of who you are. In a world obsessed with conformity, individuation is a radical act. It is the refusal to be reduced to a role, a number, or a label. It is the declaration that your life belongs to you, not your parents, not your society, not your past. And when you live from that place, when your inner and outer worlds begin to mirror each other, something miraculous happens. You come alive, not in fragments, not in roles, but in wholeness. And from that wholeness, true freedom is born. At some point on the journey inward, after the mask has been questioned, the descent has begun, and the soul has stirred. A moment arrives when you must confront a fundamental question. What is my truth? This is not a question of opinion or belief, nor is it about adopting a new ideology or identity. This question penetrates much deeper. It seeks the authentic voice beneath all conditioning, beneath all fear. To live your truth is to live from the core of who you are, not from who you were told to be, and for many, this marks the first real taste of freedom. Living your truth begins with listening, not to the world, but to the quiet, persistent voice within. This voice does not shout, it does not argue, it waits. It speaks through longing, resistance, inspiration, and often discomfort. It is the part of you that hesitates before saying yes to something you do not want. The part that feels sadness in a room full of laughter. The part that says something about this doesn't feel right. Even when everything looks perfect on the outside, that voice is your truth, and following it requires a kind of courage that cannot be faked. Why is this so hard? Because truth threatens the structures we've built to protect ourselves. It calls into question our relationships, our careers, our values, and even our sense of who we are. To live your truth is not to walk an easy path. It is to walk the path of integrity. And integrity does not mean perfection, it means wholeness. It means aligning your inner world with your outer life. It means saying no when everything in you is screaming yes just to please someone. It means choosing solitude over connection if the connection requires the death of your authenticity. Living your truth will often make others uncomfortable. It will challenge the roles you've played for them. People may say you've changed and they will be right. You have, but more accurately, you've returned. You've stopped betraying yourself for the illusion of harmony. You've stopped sacrificing your voice to avoid conflict. You've realized that peace purchased at the cost of self-abandonment is not peace at all. It is imprisonment. This path is not about rebellion for its own sake. It is not about rejecting others or withdrawing from the world. It is about participating in the world as yourself, fully, unequivocally. Living your truth doesn't mean you always feel certain. In fact, it often means living with more questions than answers, but those questions are alive. They breathe. They point you toward growth, not stagnation. You may have been taught that your truth is selfish, that being honest about your needs, desires, or boundaries is a burden on others. But the opposite is true. When you live your truth, you become trustworthy. Others can feel your groundedness, your clarity. They no longer have to guess who you are or what you stand for. You show up fully, which gives them permission to do the same. This is not a destination, but a daily practice. Living your truth means continually checking in with yourself. Is this mine, or was this given to me? Am I speaking from fear or from authenticity? And when you slip, and you will, you return. Again and again, because once you have tasted the freedom of truth, the taste of illusion becomes unbearable. This is the quiet revolution. It does not come with banners or slogans. It comes with a person standing in their own presence, no longer seeking permission to exist, no longer waiting for the world to validate their worth, just being, fully, unapologetically here. That is the power of truth. It does not require noise. It radiates, and when you begin to live from that place, you no longer merely inhabit your life. You inhabit yourself. And in that inhabiting, life begins not as a reaction, but as an expression of who you really are. There is a kind of peace that does not come from the absence of problems, but from the presence of the self. It is not found in success or achievement, nor is it dependent on recognition or approval. It is a deeper, quieter peace, one that emerges only when you have come home to yourself. When you have journeyed through the noise, through the masks, the shadows, the roles, and the fears, and arrived in the presence of who you truly are, that is when life begins in its truest sense, not as something you are performing, but as something you are living. This is the essence of wholeness, not perfection, but completeness. A life that is no longer divided between who you are and who you pretend to be, no longer fractured by contradiction, shame, or pretense. Instead, you are integrated. Your thoughts align with your words. Your actions reflect your values. Your presence becomes an extension of your essence. This kind of congruence is rare in a world that often encourages fragmentation. But it is the foundation of true fulfillment. Wholeness does not mean you are free from pain. It does not mean that fear or doubt never visit you. Rather, it means that when they do, you do not run from them. You do not silence them, suppress them, or let them control you. Instead, you listen, you learn. You hold space for all that you are, even the parts that are still wounded, still growing. Because you understand now that healing is not the elimination of pain. It is the integration of it. It is the capacity to carry your scars with grace, to walk with your past instead of being held captive by it. In this space of inner wholeness, the world begins to look different. You no longer chase things that do not nourish you. You no longer measure your worth against the standards of others. You no longer confuse busyness with purpose or attention with love. Instead, you live from within. Your choices become intentional. Your energy is not scattered by the need to prove or please. You live in rhythm with your truth, not in reaction to your fears. And from this grounded place, your relationships change. You no longer need others to complete you or fix you. You do not demand that they carry parts of you you've refused to carry yourself. You meet people as equals, not as saviors or threats. Real intimacy becomes possible because it is no longer based on projection. It is rooted in authenticity. You can see others more clearly because you have finally seen yourself. The world will still challenge you. Life will still surprise you, break you, humble you, but now you have a center, a place within that remains unmoved. You no longer collapse at every disappointment because you are not building your life on shifting sands. You are anchored, not in certainty, but in self-awareness. And from that anchoring comes resilience, not the kind that stiffens, but the kind that bends without breaking. Wholeness is not something granted to you by the world. It is something you reclaim piece by piece as you undo the false and embrace the true. It is not achieved by force, but by surrendering the idea that you must be someone else, somewhere else, living some other life to be worthy. It is the realization that everything you were seeking was never outside of you. It was always within, waiting for you to turn inward, and once you find it, you begin to live, not in fragments, not in borrowed identities, but as yourself. Fully, honestly, powerfully, this is the life that begins when you find yourself. It is not a life free of pain, but a life full of meaning, not a life defined by what you do, but by who you are. And in that authenticity, there is a beauty, a strength, and a peace that no one can take away. Because it is no longer borrowed, it is yours.